and welcome to 30 Minutes with Government. I'm your host, Giselle Misudan York. In today's edition of 30 Minutes, Government and SZV sign lease agreement, St. Martin Volleyball Association donates new court to the L.B. Scott Sports Auditorium. Tourist Bureau meets with SCL Madura and Sons about destination promotion. Kaiser University representative holds information session at USM, and the Department of Public Works busy repairing roads in several districts. All this and more ahead on 30 Minutes with Government. Stay tuned. On Friday, February 17th, the Government of St. Martin and Social Health Insurance's SZV signed a lease agreement for the new Government Administration Building. Signing the lease agreement on behalf of government was Prime Minister Mr. William Marlin, and on behalf of SZV, Director Mr. Glenn Carty. The lease agreement is for a term of 30 years and effective as of January 1st, 2017. Government will begin payments of rent as of July 2017, allowing for the time to complete the move-in process of civil servants and the termination of other rental properties, avoiding double rent payment.
It's been a long time coming. I want to first of all thank SZV for the cooperation over the past months, and I want to thank from our end Mr. Edno Labega, who was our point guard and our main man in the entire process of getting us to where we are today. Of course, on both sides, we've had teams of lawyers and other people civil servants who have been preparing documents going back and forth, including this morning, we still had some, the proverbial dots and I's to put in place. But the important thing is that we have finally reached to the point where we can sign the rental agreement. For some people, it would be like, what is it happening? Isn't the building government's building? Yes, initially it was government's building, but for reasons like we have explained in the past several times, government sold the building to SZV. SZV made investments in the building. The works are not yet completed. They're still finishing up some touches here and there, but the majority of the work has been completed to the point where the Council of Ministers were the first to move in. General Affairs and other departments have moved in, so the top floor is fully occupied now with government and civil servants, and we are now going to begin mobilizing facility services, the bottom floor, the second and the third floor. The building now belongs to SZV, and they will rent the building to government for a period of 10 years, 30 years. This is what we are signing today, the rental agreement between government and the SZV. So it gives me great pleasure, of course, to, on behalf of government, be able to sign this agreement with the SZV, and we look forward to the finishing touches, the one or two things that still need to be done. And on the part of government, what we are lacking mainly are the furniture and the IT soft and hardware in order to make it workable for all the civil servants who will be occupying this. So it has been a long process, but if we compare the 8 years that the building had been standing here unoccupied, and the probably 8 months or more that we have been busy with it, I say congratulations are in place to all those who have rolled up their sleeves to make it reach to the point where we are today. And before we sign, I would like to pass the word to Mr. Glenn Carty.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Well, I think the Prime Minister said it all. It was a journey, and today is the last signatures of this journey, where the building that SZV purchased last year, now the rental agreement will be signed. We've said this very often. The reason for this was a settlement of the outstanding that government owed SZV. We have settled that outstanding, and also in thanks with APS that have worked together on that. And the rest has now become an investment. As you know, SZV receives funds, and those funds we have to reinvest so that monies that we have today are worth more 10, 20, 30 years from today. It's an investment of the monies of our customers, the taxes they pay, that we invest that money. And by investing it even locally, we are enhancing our country and at the same time getting returns of our investment of 6%. So on behalf of SFV, we'd like to thank our new tenant. Take very, very good care of our building. And I would like to thank the teams, both from the government side, headed by Erno, and from the SZV side, for what I consider a job well done. Thank you.
One of the other things before we sign that I think it's good to know as well, all of the civil servants are not in as yet. So therefore, we are still paying rent for several buildings scattered through Philipsburg. If the agreement goes into effect January 1st, had we started paying rent on January 1st, we would have been paying rent to SZV and still rent to several buildings in Philipsburg area. We have discussed the matter with SZV. They have always been helpful and understanding. So while the rent goes into effect January 1st, the first payment won't be due until the middle of July. That gives us sufficient time to mobilize the civil servants from the other buildings where they are at, and at the same time not run in any problem by paying double rent. So right now our rent has been postponed. The payments will go into effect in July while we are occupying the building actually officially from the 1st of January, but it will give us an opportunity to clear, continue to pay the present landlords, and the SZV as landlord will start receiving payments in July for a period of 30 years.
In an effort to improve on the current playing fields and by extension the development of volleyball on St. Martin, the St. Martin Volleyball Association, SIMVA, through its affiliation with the Eastern Caribbean Volleyball Association, received a new court. Following receipt of this new court, it was decided by SIMVA to donate the court to government facilities, and it was installed and lined at the L.B. Scott Sports Auditorium for the use of both volleyball and basketball. The government facility is managed by the Foundation Upkeep Sports Federation, FUSF, and the National Sports Institute, NSI, which is the executing arm of government with regards to various sports on the island. The official handover to government took place on Wednesday, February 15th, and the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, Ms. Sylvia Jacobs, was present for the handing over of the floor. Minister Jacobs expressed gratitude to the SIMVA for their contribution to sports on St. Martin. The Department of Sports, within the ministry ECYS, has been funding the NSI and various sporting associations, including SIMVA, to strengthen them to become federations, which in turn allows for the growth and longevity of sports on the island. The St. Martin Tourist Bureau recently held talks with SEL Madura and Sons to explore further collaboration in ways to promote the island. The discussion also centered around the current promotional packages SEL Madura is running with the St. Martin Carnival Development Foundation and the St. Martin Heineken Regatta, and how to maximize these activities. In attendance at the meeting representing the Tourist Bureau was Mr. Augusto Priest, Interim Director, Ms. Marla Chamont, Acting Marketing Director, Ms. Sharina Franken, Product Development Assistant, and representing SEL Maduro, Ms. Charlize Williams, Travel Division Manager, and Mr. Shul Richardson, General Manager. You're watching 30 Minutes with Government. Stay tuned. We'll be back after these public service announcements.
The Department of Culture, in collaboration with the St. Martin National Commission for UNESCO in recognition of International Mother Language Day, presents the St. Martin English Poetry Reading, Storytelling and Narration Competition, Tuesday, February 21st, 2017 at 6 p.m. at the new Government Building, Conference Room 1. Family law, criminal law, labor law, corporate law, immigration law, electoral law, tax law, environmental law, inheritance law. The law matters to you. A joint venture between the Department of Communication and the University of St. Martin. The lecture series, The Law Matters to You, is aimed at informing and providing the general public of St. Martin about the different laws. We invite you to visit the official government website at www.stmartingov.org for details on upcoming lectures. The law matters to you, bringing the law closer to the people.
The Department of Education, in collaboration with Kaiser University Director of Enrollment Management and Admissions, Mr. Jeffrey Grinnap, hosted an information session for students interested in attending the Florida University and their parents on February 15th at the University of St. Martin. The Ministry Education, Culture, Youth and Sports signed a Memorandum of Understanding with Kaiser University, which, in detail, established a tuition matching agreement to facilitate students wanting to attend Kaiser University. At the session, the Department of Communication was able to chat with Mr. Antonio Aventurin, head of the Study Financing Department, and Mr. Grinnap. First, Mr. Aventurin.
In 2016, the government of St. Martin signed an MOU with Kaiser University to facilitate our students getting better tuition rates at Kaiser. And this visit of Mr. Grinnap is just to recruit and inform students on St. Martin of the possibilities of studying at Kaiser University. So let Mr. Grinnap maybe add.
Yeah. For years I've been coming and working with students from St. Martin with Calvin and the ministry and study finance, and all the students that come have always been great students. They graduate. Can't say they all come back. Some come back, some don't come back, but they're all very successful in what they do. So when the opportunity came and I changed institutions, I said one of the first things I had to do was sign an MOU with the government and study finance to be able to bring students to Kaiser University. And so far, very well received, and we look forward to our first students coming in, piloting it and setting the stage for the future.
In a short synopsis, can you tell us what is the offer Kaiser is giving to? Basically,
study finance gives about $15,000, and Kaiser will match $10,000 of that as the current MOU. So between the two, it will be $25,000 off for the flagship campus in West Palm Beach, Florida.
And just an overview of some of the courses or some of the studies that's possible with Kaiser University.
The flagship campus in West Palm Beach is primarily business and health. There are some other ones. We have a college of golf that has golf management associate degree and bachelor's degree, but it's a business management, marketing, accounting, finance, entrepreneurship, criminal justice. Then we have hospitality. Is a business degree, the business of hospitality, and ultimately into health. We have exercise science, sport medicine, nursing. So there's a lot of opportunities of breadth. There's over 120 different majors at Kaiser as a whole. A lot of them are done online, so people get hybrid and do what they want to do with both.
Prime Minister William Mullen announced at the Council of Ministers press briefing that a 4-person delegation from the United States would be visiting the country to start negotiations about the establishment of a U.S. Immigration and Customs pre-clearance at Princess Juliana International Airport and possibly at the Dr. A.C. Watty Cruise and Cargo Facility.
The pre-clearance agreement is an agreement between the United States and St. Martin. So it's an agreement between the governments. And once you have an agreement and an understanding as to how this will be implemented in your country, under which conditions this will be allowed in St. Martin, what is expected of St. Martin, what are the conditions, etc., then you move to phase 2, which would be the discussion with the facility where the pre-clearance can be carried out, because it is not only maybe the airport, but we have been speaking for years now about not pre-clearance, but home porting in St. Martin. Now, if you're home porting and you're only doing Caribbean ports or non-U.S. ports, you would say, well, okay, you don't need the pre-clearance like they would do, or the clearance that they would do, like in Miami. You need an American visa, you need this, you need that. So people not having an American visa cannot board a cruise ship in a U.S. port because they need to get to that U.S. port. But if you board in St. Martin and that ship is heading to Puerto Rico or to St. Thomas, then you're going to run into problems. So in the future, we may have that discussion as well.
In recent weeks, the Department of Public Works, in partnership with several key stakeholders, have been busy carrying out repairs to roads in several districts. Works such as repairs to water lines, the pouring of concrete, cleaning of grills of drainage pits, patchwork, and recapping activities have all been carried out. Minister of RAMI, the Honorable Christopher Emmanuel, in a recent press briefing, took the time out to thank the department for their hard work.
And if you look out there now, you'll see that the guys are out there and they're doing a marvelous job. I want to thank the department head for that, for what they are doing, because they really seem to be putting some gust into it, doing it with pride. I haven't seen sort of a new face on the public roads as what I'm seeing right now.
You're watching 30 Minutes with Government. Stay tuned. We'll be back after these public service announcements.
The Department of Culture, in collaboration with the St. Martin National Commission for UNESCO, in recognition of International Mother Language Day, presents the St. Martin English Poetry Reading, Storytelling and Narration Competition, Tuesday, February 21st, 2017 at 6 p.m. at the new Government Building, Conference Room 1. Family law, criminal law, labor law, corporate law, immigration law, electoral law, tax law, environmental law, inheritance law. The law matters to you. A joint venture between the Department of Communication and the University of St. Martin. The lecture series, The Law Matters to You, is aimed at informing and providing the general public of St. Martin about the different laws. We invite you to visit the official government website at www.stmartingov.org for details on upcoming lectures. The law matters to you, bringing the law closer to the people.
In continuing coverage of the National Health Insurance Conference held on January 26th and 27th, we feature a presentation from Mr. Anko Ringeling. We now go to Mr. Ringeling at the Davy Little Bay Beach Hotel.
Aruba has a national health insurance which was introduced in 2001, and with the introduction in 2001, Aruba was the first country in the Kingdom of the Netherlands to introduce a universal mandatory health insurance for its residents. What I would like to do is to walk you through some of the talking points as mentioned on this slide. But before I do that, I would like to give a quick tour of the main characteristics of the national health insurance in Aruba. Of course, it's national health insurance, so there's universal access, universal coverage. Every legal resident is eligible. It is mandatory. Exemption is possible on TAFing for persons who has a foreign legal-based insurance with coverage at least the same as the AZV. Think about, for instance, you have American nationals who come to live in Aruba, and they have Medicare of some of the social insurances of the states, which are legally based. Okay, such a person, if he can show us that he has this, more or less the same coverage as the ACV, can get an exemption. There is equality of care in the sense that there is one standard package. It's based on in-kind delivery, so there's no reimbursement, no co-payments, no deductibles. I guess the professor was referring to co-payments in Aruba. What I mentioned was that, you know, there were plans to introduce, but politically it was too sensitive, so it was never realized. And in those plans, like the professor indicated, we agreed with the providers that they would collect the co-payments. There is a possibility of supplementary insurance by private companies. And in Aruba, all of the private companies are offering supplementary insurances, especially for the larger companies such as the hotels, the water plant, WEP, the electricity company, you know, those kind of larger companies. It's based on solidarity, that is to say each person is contributing in line with his or her ability to pay. There is no risk adjustment in a national health insurance, you know, no risk adjustment based on income, sex, age, or previous medical history. The financing is being done by an income-based premium, health tax, a sales tax. The sales tax was introduced 2 or 3 years ago, so that's recent, and a fiscal contribution, a landsbijdrage. We have payroll taxes, and the payroll tax is like an advance levy, voorheffing, and that is shared by employer and employees. We don't have a reinsurance scheme. It is a single-payer system, so there's an independent public entity with legal personality, zelfstandig bestuursorgaan, like they call it in Dutch, with a supervisory board consisting of representatives of employees, employers, and the Minister of Health. Maybe it's interesting to know that when we started the ACV, there were representatives of the providers also in the supervisory board. And over time, the ordinance was changed in that the providers were not longer represented in the supervisory board. You know why? Because the decision making, because of the involvement of the providers in the board, was heavily how you call it? Vertraagd? Slow down, yes, yes. So it was decided by government, parliament, to not include the providers in the supervisory board. Maybe you could imagine something. If the entity, the executing body, is negotiating like prices with the providers, and the providers have the representatives in the board, we will never reach a consensus or a agreement, right? So that is why we have, the ordinance is enforcing us to have regular meetings with all the providers, at least 2 times a year, at least, but we have more meetings per year with the different providers and their associations. Because it's one single payer, we have one central database with all the data from the production of the different providers mirrored by the consumption of the individual citizens or residents. And yeah, that's very important because not only that by a single payer we're able to reduce bureaucracy and make the administration more simple, but now we are able to collect in uniform, reliable data medical data, financial data, that helps us sustain the policy making. So that is, in general lines, the main characteristic of the national health insurance. If I, thank you. Oh yes, before I go to the agenda, let me walk you through the benefit package. A little slow. Back, previous, please. One more. Yes, this is the coverage. The family doctors as gatekeepers, so you need a referral to go further down the line in the services, medical specialists, inpatient services, hospital prescription drugs, who has a positive list and only the drugs on the list are being covered, laboratory services, overseas services. People have a choice, the insured. The countries to which we may refer are in the ordinance, so it's a limited number of countries: Colombia, Venezuela, the States, and Holland. If we decide to refer a patient to, let's say, Colombia, to Hospital Bucaramanga, and the patient says, no, you know, I would like to go to the States or to another hospital in Colombia, that's possible. But it is, then the patient has to pay the cost in advance, and we will reimburse the patient maximum the amount of money that we would have to pay our preferred location. Okay? The medical devices, pregnancy-related services. Anyway, excluded are heart and liver transplants, and that sounds maybe a little cruel, but when we introduced the ACV, none of the packages that existed at that time had covered heart and liver transplant. And what's more, even if a patient would get a heart or liver transplant, we cannot give the NAZOR, the follow-up care, right? Yeah, we cannot give the follow-up care in Aruba in an adequate way. So that's why it was excluded, and up till now it is excluded. Cosmetic surgery, of course. Emergency care abroad, that is, if you go with vacation or a business trip and something happens, it's not being covered by the ACV. And also speech therapy is not being covered. Okay, now the talking points that I'm going to elaborate on are very much focusing on the financial sustainability. It's not to say that we don't pay attention to the quality of care, okay? But I have limited time, and some of the main concerns are the financial sustainability. Now let's do a comparison before and after the introduction of the ACV. Before the introduction, there was risk selection by private insurance, therefore limited access for specific groups, different coverages in a fragmented system, and after the introduction, of course, you know, some of these problems were gone. We had high operational costs, about 9%. Under the present system, we have lower operational costs, about 4.5%.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of 30 Minutes with Government. For video on demand, be sure to log on to the official website of the Government of St. Martin at www.stmartingov.org. Also visit us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. I am your host, Giselle Masudan York, and from all of us here at the Department of Communications, we'll see you next time.